Hi everybody, this is Mr. Defy again. It's good to be back. This video will be about how to get the slope of a line. And I think the best way to think about slope is that it's a set of directions to go from one place on the line to another place on the same line. And so we're going to go ahead and start with example 1 over here. The first thing you should notice is that there are no points given to you to look at, although there is a blue line there. And the reason you can see the line is because there are an infinite number of points, and all those points gathered together, clustered together in a group, form this one line. And the reason is because they all have something in common, and that is the slope, which I'll show you in a moment. So we will begin by first marking on this graph 2 clear points. Now the best way to do that is to look for a place where the line crosses through the corner of a square. Now it has to be exactly the corner. So if you trace the line carefully with your eyes, you can see that I do have a point right here. So I'll put my point there. I also have another point. Oh, you thought I was going to put it there, didn't you? But I can't, and the reason is because if you look real close, you can see it barely misses that corner, but it's enough for me not to put a point there because I don't want to guess where this is. I want to know for sure. And so the search continues until I find, aha, there it is. Another clear point. So although they are far apart, it's enough for me to have these 2 points marked on my graph. So what I do now is I write down where they're located. And one thing to remember, when you're writing the ordered pairs for points, you want to go by the kind of like the law of a compass, right? So this would be considered north, or in this case, positive. This would be considered, I'll zoom out, south, which would be negative. This would be considered east or positive because you're going to the right on the number line, and this would be considered west or negative. So when you write the order pairs, you have to bear these signs in mind. So this first point I put over here, which I will call point A, so that we can give it a name, and this one point B. Point A is located 1 step to the left of this y-axis. This is your range, the y's, the outputs, the dependents, whatever you want to call it. And the way you know what number to use is because you always start at the very center. This is where we begin, where that yellow highlight mark is. You start there. That's the origin, which means a place of beginning. And from there, you always move right or left and then up or down. Okay? And as soon as you put a point, you return to that place in the middle, the origin, because that's like your reset button. And so you always go back there and move from there again. So anyway, going back to point A, from the origin, you would have to go 1 step to the left, and then you'd have to go 1, 2, 3, 4 steps up. So let me go back and write these as numbers. So 1 step to the left would be 1 hop this way. So that would be considered a -1 because you're moving in the negative direction. And you only went 1 step to get to the place where point A is. Now, from there you have to go up 1, 2, 3, and 4 spaces, and you're moving upwards. Because you're moving up 4, it's a +4. And so my output number would be a 4. Okay? So I'm going to get rid of this here so it's a little cleaner for other things we need to use that space for. Now to go from the origin, again, I snap back here because this is my reset button. From here, I will need to go to point B. And to get there, I need to know how far to the right it is. So I see, if I trace with my eyes, point B is about 4 spaces to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this time I'm moving in the positive direction, which means my 4 will be a positive. So a 4, comma, and then going down 1, 2, 3, 4 would be a -4 since I'm moving down in that direction. Down is negative. Okay, getting rid of this. Now we have our ordered pairs. So what I do with it, I can do is several things. I can make a table, and for your homework tonight, this is one thing I asked you to do. to make an input slash output table. And this slash actually should be a cut of the table going straight down. So again, input, x, domain, independent, whatever you want to call it. My numbers here are -1 and 4. On the output side, -1 pairs up with +4, and the +4 pairs up with the -4. Okay, now to get the slope of this, or in other words, the change, you have to consider by how much this number is changing into this number, and how much this number is changing into that number. There are two ways to do it. One is by using simple math, and another way is by just counting squares, which anybody can do. So I will show you both for this. For the counting squares part, all you would have to do is pick a point. It doesn't matter where you begin. So A or B, doesn't matter. But know this, if you're going from A to B, you would be sliding down. So I want you to think about this as though you were hiking. If you were hiking, and this is the place you were hiking, you would be going down, which means that this line is decreasing, or it's going down from right to left. Even if you're going from point B up to point A, this line is still considered going down, okay? Because we read from left to right, it's easier to go from point A to point B. So if that makes more sense, do it that way. But anyway, when you think about climbing stairs, to climb stairs, you first have to, and I should get rid of this here. To climb stairs, you first have to rise. In other words, you have to put your foot up here, right? Until it's at this level. And then you go ahead and put your foot down, and you go this way. So this would be considered the rise, whereas this would be considered the run. And we covered that in class as well. So first you rise, you lift your foot, then you put it down at the next level above where you are right now. So that would be considered the run. So because you rise before you run, rise represents your change in y, whereas your run represents your change in x. And so because we say this in that order, rise and then run, the way we write this down is we write it as the slope, which is the same thing as the rate of change. Rate of change is given in terms of the change in y, in other words, the rise, over the change in x. And so everything I do has to adhere to that idea, oh, the change in y first and then the change in x. So let's go back to the table over here and see what we have. So we have 4 becoming a -4. Now, by how much does it take to get a 4 to become a -4, to go from there to there? Well, if you're not quite sure, you can go over here and you can count the squares. So we're at level 4 now, but we change and end up at -4. So this position is what causes these numbers to change from one to another. So all we have to do is start here and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, now I'm on the same level where point B is, even though I'm not at point B right now. Because I went down a total of 8 times, and going down means negative, this is -8. So -8. Now for the input side, to get from here all the way to point B, all I have to do is count the squares again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because I went to the right 5 times, this 5 is considered a positive 5. And so my change along my domain is by 5, going to the right. So going back to our change in y, change in x, what this means is that our change in y, which ended up being a -8 or a -8, over our change in x, which ended up being a positive 5, this becomes our slope. And it's a set of directions in going from one place to another. So if I wanted to go from A to B, all I would have to do is exactly what it tells me. So I would go from point A down 8 times. And once I reach that platform where B is, I would make a right and go to the right 5 times. And that's it. That's a slope. Now, if I wanted to go from point B to point A, so this is going from A to B. But if I wanted to go the other way, from B to A, then would that be any different? And the answer is yes, because this time in going from B to A, I'll get rid of this over here so it's not too cluttered. In going from B to A, your steps are now changed because you're going upwards. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're still moving 8 times, but because we're going 8 in the positive direction, up, this is a positive 8. But watch what happens. When I go from this place to point A, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But this 5 is now going in the negative direction. So that means that my slope ends up being different. It ends up being 8 positive, but 5 negative. And all that means, in terms of directions, is that I would go up 8 times instead of down 8 like it was over here. And instead of going to the right 5 times like I did over here, I would now have to go left 5 times to get from one point to another. And there you have it. That's the slope of a line. Now, by counting squares, it's simple, but sometimes you won't have a graph to look at, in which case there has to be another way to get the slope. And in my next video, I will show you how to do it. So I hope this was helpful to you. Please check out the other video that I will be posting on Schoology, which is coming up right after this one. Thanks, and I look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.